Todd Halleck here, talking to you today about guardians and conservators. This is the second video in this series about choosing a guardian and conservator for your minor or disabled children. As we talked about in the last video, there are many reasons why we plan our estates and many tools that we use to plan our estates. We use wills, we use trusts, we use powers of attorney, we use healthcare directives, we use living wills. All of those accomplish different objectives, but probably the most important thing that we do when we're planning our estate is make sure that the needs of those who we are responsible for are cared for. And one of the ways we do that is by putting appropriate people in charge of those things. And as we discussed, in many states, a guardian is the person who's there to look after the needs of a person. The conservator is the person who's there to look after the financial assets of the child. That could be financial assets that you've left to them as an inheritance. It could also be their own financial assets. For example, if you were killed in a motor vehicle accident and there was a personal injury settlement that came to the child, that would be an example of that child's own financial asset that needs to be managed. Different states are going to have different ages when you would manage too, but usually that's going to be age 18. And we talked last time about some of the qualities you want to look for in choosing the guardian, the person who's going to take care of the physical needs. Today we're going to talk a little bit about the conservator and choosing the person who's going to take care of the financial needs of that person. Now, sometimes they're one and the same. Sometimes the person comes with the whole package and we can just name that one person or persons to manage those assets as well as to help take care of the physical needs of the person. But other times that doesn't work quite as well. Or maybe you want a little bit of a check and balance there. You want somebody who's not quite in the mix every day, minding the store a little bit so that things don't get out of hand in terms of how the assets are being spent. So there's a little more of a buffer there. But for whatever reason, if you decide to choose someone different, or even if you're choosing the same person, here's 6 more things that you can consider when you're dealing with someone who's going to be managing the financial assets of your minor or disabled child. First, is this a person of good judgment? Are they going to be wise? Do they have experience? Younger people may be very smart, and some other people may be very smart, but they may not have the experience and the wisdom to exercise good judgment. So do you view this as a person of good judgment? Second, part of having good judgment is knowing when you need help. Are they the kind of person that's going to be willing to get help from accountants, from financial advisors, possibly from attorneys, to make sure that the assets are managed appropriately and in the best interest of the child? Third, are they a good communicator? They're going to need to potentially be communicating with the child. If it's not the same person as the guardian, they're going to need to be communicating with the guardian. Can they convey the things that they need to convey in a way that won't create friction or turmoil or things like that? In the very best sense of the word, this person needs to be somewhat of a politician. So can they communicate well? Fourth, do they have good attention to detail? If you're dealing with finances, you've got to have attention to detail. Now, a lot of us in our own personal lives will, use the close enough rule. Well, that doesn't quite cut it when you're managing someone else's money. You have to be exacting in your willingness to keep track of where every penny goes and how it's spent, how it might be increased or decreased through increase or decrease in investments. You will need to prepare reports at least annually that convey the financial details of the estate that you're managing. And so you got to have attention to detail or you're going to find yourself in trouble quickly. So does the person have a good attention to detail? Along those same lines, number 5 is their own house in order. If they can't balance a checkbook, you don't want them balancing it for your kids. If they're in and out of financial turmoil, you don't want them managing your kids' money, no matter how great a person they might be. So understand, is their financial house is their own financial house in order? And 6, kind of along the lines of being a good communicator, is if you have chosen a separate guardian, how well will these particular people work together, right? If you've chosen your sister to be the guardian and you've chosen another sister to be the conservator, but those two sisters can't stand each other, that's a recipe for problems and would really discourage that from being the situation you put your kids in. So will the people that you pick get along well together? So there's another 6 things to think about when you're choosing that guardian and conservator. At the end of the day, nobody is going to be perfect. Frankly, you're not perfect. But you're probably as close to perfect as your kids are ever going to get. But no one's going to replicate you exactly. So don't wait for perfect. And don't neglect this decision, right? We don't know when these things are going to happen. If you procrastinate the decision, then it's going to be left up to the court to decide. And that can always be a difficult thing for a court. And it can lead to turmoil as family members maybe jockey for position in handling these things. And it may mean kids are being bounced from place to place. Lots of bad things that can happen when you don't take charge and make the decision. So do what you need to do to think through this issue and come to a conclusion. Don't put this off. This is, for people with minor children or disabled children, this is number 1 on the list. And so don't neglect getting this done. So get that guardianship and conservatorship nomination in place in your plan, and know you can change as your circumstances change. So don't be caught up in paralysis by analysis. Get her done.